Captain Morgthal of the Centaurian Diplomatic Corps had seen many things in his 300 cycles of service to the Elder Empire. He had witnessed the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth of stars, and even that one time the Vexillians tried to claim ownership of black holes. But nothing, absolutely nothing, frightened him more than watching a human smile slowly fade. "Alert the High Council," he whispered to his aide. "Code beige. I repeat, code beige." His aide's 4 eyes widened in terror. "Are you certain, Captain?" The human ambassador still appears to be, smiling. "That's not a smile anymore," Morgthal hissed. "That's what the humans call gritted teeth. We have approximately 7 minutes before politeness failure." The Grand Council chamber of the Elder Empire sprawled across an entire asteroid, hollowed out and transformed into the galaxy's most prestigious diplomatic venue. Species from 12,000 worlds gathered here to resolve disputes, form alliances, and most importantly, to never, ever make humans drop their polite act. Ambassador Jack Reynolds of Earth stood perfectly still at the center of the chamber. A human of average height with unremarkable brown hair and what aliens considered an alarming number of teeth, Jack had served as Earth's primary diplomat for 15 years. His record was impeccable. His suit was immaculate. His patience was legendary. And right now, that patience was evaporating faster than an ice cube on a neutron star. "Ambassador Klaxxi," Jack said, his voice maintaining that terrifying evenness that made the elder race's appendages tremble. "I believe you just referred to my homeworld as, and I quote, a festering cesspool of primitive bipeds who wouldn't recognize proper civilization if it bit them on their vestigial tails. Would you care to rephrase that statement?" The Klaxxi ambassador chittered smugly, mandibles clicking in what his species recognized as superior amusement. 7 feet tall with an exoskeleton that gleamed like obsidian under the chamber's lights, Klaxxi represented the newest addition to the Elder Empire, a species that hadn't yet learned the rule. "I see no need to rephrase truth, human," Klaxxi replied. "Our archaeological surveys of your system indicate your kind was still flinging excrement at each other when my ancestors had already mapped the galaxy." A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Several diplomats began quietly accessing their emergency evacuation protocols. Jack's assistant, Tessa Monroe, stepped forward. Unlike her boss, Tessa made no attempt to hide her annoyance. Humans had a good cop/bad cop dynamic that confused many alien species. They assumed Tessa was the dangerous one because she never bothered with the polite act. They were catastrophically wrong. "Ambassador Reynolds," Tessa said quietly, "perhaps we should request a brief recess to allow cooler heads to prevail?" Jack gave her a tight smile. "That won't be necessary, Tessa. I'm sure Ambassador Klaxxi is simply unaware of our diplomatic conventions. Perhaps a cultural misunderstanding." On the observation deck, Morgthal groaned. "He's giving them an out. Please, for the love of the 7 moons, take the out." But the Klaxxi were infamous for their pride. Klaxxi's antennae twitched in what his species considered raucous laughter. "There is no misunderstanding, human. We have reviewed your species file extensively. You are newcomers, barely 200 years into faster-than-light travel. Your technology is borrowed. Your territories are granted by our generosity. And your continued presence in this chamber is merely a courtesy we extend to all sentient life, however primitive." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Jack's smile hadn't moved, but somehow it now contained less warmth than the void between galaxies. "I see," Jack said. He straightened his tie, a gesture that caused 3 Vexillian diplomats to faint dead away. "And is this the official position of the Klaxxi Dominion?" "It is," Klaxxi clicked triumphantly. "Furthermore, we formally petition the Elder Council to downgrade humanity's status from emerging civilization to protected observation species. Your kind clearly requires several more millennia of development before you can meaningfully contribute to galactic society." In the suddenly silent chamber, the soft exhale from Jack Reynolds sounded like a supernova. "Well then," Jack said, removing his diplomatic pin and placing it carefully on the podium before him. "I believe we've reached what we humans call an impasse." Morgthal was already moving, shoving his way toward the emergency override controls. "Evacuate the chamber. This is not a drill. Too late. Jack Reynolds smiled again, but this time it was different. This was not the practiced diplomatic smile of a human pretending to find your 3-hour presentation on vacuum regulations fascinating. This was not the patient smile of a human listening to yet another species claim they invented pizza first. This was the smile humans wore when they were done playing nice. "Let me tell you something about humans, Ambassador Klaxxi," Jack said, his voice now completely devoid of its diplomatic modulation. "We didn't make it off our festering cesspool by accident. We didn't build a global civilization by being harmless. And we certainly didn't earn our place among the stars by being nice." The Klaxxi ambassador's mandibles froze mid-click. Humanity, Jack continued, now pacing around the Klaxxi delegation, spent most of its history trying to kill itself. We perfected warfare before we perfected indoor plumbing. We split the atom before we figured out how to cure the common cold. We were launching ourselves into space using controlled explosions while simultaneously pointing thousands of world-ending weapons at our own heads. The elder council members were now retreating to a safe distance. Several had activated personal shields. "And do you know why the Elder Empire really invited us to join?" Jack asked, his voice rising. "It's not because they found our music charming or our cuisine interesting. It's because in the 50 years between us discovering radio and us achieving interstellar travel, we broadcasted approximately 7,000 fictional scenarios detailing how we would react to hostile alien contact." I don't understand," Klaxxi stammered. "He's referring to their entertainment media," whispered an aide. "We have a file. They call them movies and video games. According to our cultural analysts, approximately 95% end with humans triumphant, usually through violence." Jack was now standing nose to mandible with Klaxxi. "So when the Elder Scouts found a species that had nearly destroyed itself countless times yet somehow kept surviving, a species that spent its leisure time imagining how to defeat technologically superior alien invaders, a species that strapped itself to rockets knowing there was a good chance of explosion, what do you think they did?" Tessa, who had retreated to a safe distance, called out helpfully. "They established first contact protocols specifically designed to appear non-threatening to humans." "Bingo!" Jack shouted, causing several translator devices to short out from the volume. "The Elder Empire didn't invite us in because they thought we were ready. They invited us in because they were terrified of what would happen if they didn't." Around the chamber, the older diplomats were nodding reluctantly. The Klaxxi delegation was beginning to understand their grave miscalculation. "So here's what's going to happen," Jack said, his voice now dangerously quiet. "You're going to withdraw your petition. You're going to issue a formal apology to Earth. And you're going to grant humanity preferential trade status on all Klaxxi borders for the next 50 years. That's outrageous." Klaxxi sputtered. "The Dominion would never." "Or," Jack interrupted, "I can drop the polite act completely, and we can see what happens when you force humanity to demonstrate exactly why the Elder Empire has that one special rule about us." The chamber fell so silent you could hear the quantum fluctuations in the air processors. Perhaps, a new voice broke in, "I might offer some historical context for our Klaxxi friends." All eyes turned to Elder Zolak, the most ancient member of the council, his gelatinous form quivering slightly as he floated forward. 300 cycles ago, Zolak began, before humanity joined our community, the Rigelian Empire made a similar assessment of Earth. They attempted a small-scale invasion of a region humans called New Jersey. The engagement lasted approximately 7 hours. "What happened?" one of the younger Klaxxi delegates asked. "The Rigelian Empire no longer exists," Zolak stated flatly. "And humans make documentaries about the incident that they show to their younglings as entertainment. They call it Independence Day." This was, of course, not entirely accurate, but no one was about to correct the elder. Klaxxi's antennae drooped in submission. "We may have spoken hastily, Ambassador Reynolds. The Klaxxi Dominion wishes to reconsider its position." Jack's demeanor transformed instantly, the diplomatic mask sliding back into place so smoothly it gave several diplomats whiplash. "Wonderful," he exclaimed, retrieving his pin and reattaching it to his lapel. "Cultural misunderstandings happen to the best of us. I look forward to a productive relationship between our peoples. As Jack and Tessa exited the chamber, the gathered diplomats exhaled collectively. Another crisis averted. Another day without discovering what happens when humans truly lose their patience. Morgthal approached Elder Zolak, his tendrils still trembling from the adrenaline equivalent coursing through his system. Elder, is it true? About the Rigelians and this New Jersey? The ancient being's surface rippled in what might have been amusement. Of course not. The Rigelians are currently a prosperous member of the trading alliance in the Gamma Quadrant. Then why? Because, Captain, Zolak interrupted, sometimes a useful fiction prevents an unfortunate reality. The humans have a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We have simply convinced the galaxy that humanity's stick is bigger than it might actually be. As they spoke, they watched through the viewport as Jack and Tessa boarded their shuttle. Just before entering, Jack turned and gave a friendly wave to the observation deck. Are we certain about that, Elder? Morgthal asked quietly. About the size of their stick? Elder Zolak's form shuddered slightly. No, Captain. And I, for one, have no desire to find out. In the shuttle, Tessa turned to Jack with a grin. You enjoyed that, didn't you? Jack loosened his tie and let out a long breath. I have no idea what you mean. I was the picture of diplomatic restraint. Restraint? You nearly made the Vexillian ambassador molt in terror. They shouldn't have backed the Klaxxi play. Jack shrugged, kicking off his uncomfortable formal shoes. Besides, it worked, didn't it? We got everything we wanted without having to actually drop the act completely. Tessa raised an eyebrow. One day they'll call our bluff, you know. Jack's smile turned genuine, and somehow that was more terrifying than anything the council had witnessed today. Who says we're bluffing? As their shuttle pulled away, 36 diplomatic vessels scrambled to create a respectful distance in its wake. The Elder Empire would update its protocols tomorrow. The rule about humans would be emphasized in bold, flashing text, with an addendum. Never make humans drop the polite act. And if they start smiling while they're angry, just surrender immediately.